Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Where is Zur, the show where we find Zur and we look at his inventory. I'm Tie Guy Travis, and today you can find Zur inside the tower here. So we're going to go, he's going to be over here in the hangar, but we're going to go ahead and land here first and walk over there. So let's go. All right, once you have touched down in the tower, immediately turn to your left, start walking down the walkway, and eventually you'll find Zur hanging out in the little walkway in the hangar. And here we are. There is Zur in all of his glory. Let's take a look at what he's selling this week.
I bring gifts of the nine.
All right, up first, let's take a look at his exotics. He has Suros Regime. This is an auto rifle that used to be great. Now it's sort of fallen into irrelevancy. But if you like auto rifles, it does help you stay alive, regenerates your health, and does some extra damage when it's in the ADS mode. So pretty interesting weapon. The Bombardiers, I quite like this hunter exotic that leaves behind little explosive grenades every time you dodge. Unfortunately, this is just a so-so roll of this exotic, so if you have a better one, obviously you'd probably want to use that instead. However, if you don't have this added to your collection, this is a perfectly fine roll with a decent mobility roll for hunters and very high intellect, which is always nice. Ashen Wake, I really do not like this exotic for Titans. I am a Titan main, and improved fusion grenades is as boring of an exotic perk as it sounds. This is also just a so-so roll with mobility that's much too high, in my opinion, for a Titan, so I would definitely skip over this. Finally, Crown of the Tempests. This is probably the best roll I have seen Zur sell in a long, long time. First of all, it has low mobility, which is really after my own heart. Secondly, it's got unbelievably high resilience. I mean, 30 overall stats on that one. Recovery and intellect could obviously be a little bit better, but it's just got really good strength, discipline, and that resilience probably, actually, not even probably, definitely the most important stat in Destiny right now, given the advent of Solar 3.0. Plus, this is a pretty decent exotic. If you are an Arc Warlock, it is quite good. So I would absolutely buy this exotic today. 70 overall stats and a 30 resilience. I mean, it's really hard to do better than that. So pick this up. I mean, that's amazing. So let's go ahead and take a look at legendary weapons. First, we've got the 7th Seraph Officer Revolver. This is not my favorite hand cannon. High impact reserves is a pretty decent perk for this weapon, but threat detector is not, so I would probably skip over this. Extraordinary Rendition. I actually quite like this submachine gun with surplus and tap the trigger. It's pretty decent, but we've seen better rolls on this gun, quite frankly, and it's also not the best submachine gun you can really get right now. So, this is so-so. Pick it up if you want a decent submachine gun and haven't been able to get a roll this good quite yet. Wolf Tone Draw. I quite enjoy this bow. Bows aren't really part of the meta right now. Harmony and Sneak Bow are also not my favorite perks on this bow. I would probably skip. Distant Tumult. Sorry, I don't even know how to say this word. Distant Tumulus, I'm going to guess. Actually, this is a pretty great roll for PvE or PvP. Opening Shot is probably my favorite perk in PvP just because you get so many first opening shots with all the respawning you're doing in most modes. Clown Cartridge is less useful in PvP, but it is quite good in PvE, especially for the sniper rifle archetype. So I quite like this roll. I don't know about Distant Tumulus. I don't have a lot of experience with this weapon in my personal use, so I don't know how it feels overall, but just looking at the overall perks, not bad. It is a rapid fire frame, which might mean that I probably wouldn't like the feel of it, but overall, hard to do better than those perks if you're looking at a PvE sniper rifle, so definitely consider picking it up. Next, we've got First In Last Out. As usual, opening shot on shotguns continues to be amazing for PvP. Hipfire Grip is also pretty good in PvP, where sometimes you don't have time to ADS. I quite like this weapon. This is probably my favorite legendary weapon that Zur is selling today. Opening shot, in case you don't know, it does give additional accuracy and range on the first shot of your attack. In PvP, you die a lot and you respawn, so you have a lot of opening shots, especially since you only spawn with 2 bullets. And so this ends up being a pretty good perk overall to have on your weapons for PvP. Corsair's Wrath. Killing Wind is quite good. Unrelenting is decent. Linear fusion rifles are also a pretty strong part of the meta. Maybe pick this up. I think you could probably do better. Unrelenting isn't my favorite perk for a linear fusion rifle, but Killing Wind is always good, so maybe pick that one up. And finally, we've got the Keening Sidearm. I hate this weapon, and I hate this roll. Slide Shot is terrible for sidearms, at least in my opinion. Sympathetic Arsenal I really don't like on any weapon, to be honest. And it also has an origin trait where it grants increased reload speed when you're out of combat. I kind of think that this is a pretty useless perk. Outside of combat is not really when you need reload speed to be faster. So yeah, I would not buy this weapon. Let's move on to Legendary Armor for the Titans. The Titans did get one decent roll this week. They have this chest piece that has low mobility, pretty decent resilience and recovery, decent intellect and strength, and it's got stats in all the right places. 64 overall is pretty high, not the highest we've seen Xur sell, but you could do a lot worse than this, so that's a pretty decent roll overall. The gauntlets are definitely wanting. 60 overall with 9 in mobility I would not buy. Helmet has much better stat distribution, but unfortunately it's 55 overall stats, which is terrible, so I wouldn't buy that. And then finally the boots. 63 is pretty decent, but again, 12 mobility, it's a lot of lost stat points for the Titan, so I wouldn't pick that up. So yeah, the star of the show this week for Titans is the chest piece. And with that, let's move on to our next character. All right, we are going to take a look at the armor for Warlocks now.
Perhaps this is why the Nine sent me here.
So Warlocks this week, unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you. None of your armor is very enticing. You've got this high mobility 60 overall stat roll that I would certainly skip. You've got this low stat roll of 59 with some decent distribution. I still think the mobility is a little too high. You've got this helmet with 61. Interesting stat distribution, but it's just so low stat that it's kind of hard to get excited about it. And then finally, 63 overall, not bad, but 8 mobility, 18 strength, 16 resilience. It's just not really anything to write home about. And we've certainly seen much better loot drop for Warlocks in the past. So unfortunately, if you're a Warlock this week, I hate to break it to you, not a lot to look forward to unless you are just building up your armor, which seems unlikely that you'd be watching this video if you're doing that. But if you are, these boots are decent. Everything else I would probably skip. But yeah, not a lot to really love with Warlocks this week. But don't forget, you've got the Crown of Tempests. You've got this helmet up here. So if you are a Warlock, you can't feel too bad because you got an amazing exotic that you absolutely should buy, especially in anticipation of Arc 3.0 next season. So pick that up, but maybe skip the Legendary Armor this week. Let's move on to the final character. All right, and finally, let's check out the armor for the Hunters. Hunters did get one really great roll this week, so let's look at that, and then we'll look at the other stuff later. That is the grips. These are the gauntlets for the Hunter. 65 overall stat roll is fantastic. It's got 15 mobility, 15 recovery, 15 intellect, and 12 strength. Those are all great places to put the stats. I personally wish resilience were a little higher because it's so important in the meta right now. But if you're building a Hunter, mobility is going to be more important to you than most, and 65 overall is pretty great. It's just about as high as legendary stats can get at the base level. Moving on to the other stuff, they've got a 61 roll here with a high recovery. Not bad if you're looking for a spiky build with recovery, but overall the stats aren't impressively high. Over here, a 59 with super high mobility. If you have a specific build, this could be useful, but overall, usually if it's below 60, I kind of don't even really look at it. And then finally, a 59 roll again. Wouldn't really consider this a great roll, although it does have high intellect and might be useful in certain builds. And that's it for Hunters.
I hope to be here
Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. That's all for Xur, and for everything related to Destiny 2 and Xur and his inscrutable ways, stick with IGN.
Do not be alarmed. I know no reason to cause you harm.